So he's going to start out with some things. He's been in law enforcement for over 30 plus years. So if anybody knows anything about law enforcement, it's definitely him. So without further ado, Deacon Otis, the floor is yours, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pastor said, my name is Don Otis. I'm going to introduce my wife. She's sitting in the back, DeWan Otis. I have a nephew and a niece here also. And when Pastor asked me to come, I was excited because I get a joy out of standing before people and talking and passing on information. And I listen to you introduce yourself. Did anybody here go to Linwood? Anybody in here? Nobody in here? You went to Linwood? You were up there when I was up there? You went to another charter school? Okay. You know, law enforcement has been good to me. But growing up, I grew up on Cooper Road. Where's the Green Oaks fella? Is he good? Green Oaks, okay. Keep raising his hand, he's gonna be. But I grew up on Cooper Road in the 60s and the 70s when it just wasn't cool to interact with law enforcement. And I was prejudiced toward the police. I didn't like the police. And I didn't like the police. Remember I said I was prejudiced. I didn't like the police based on what my friends were telling me. But my friends were bad friends, and they did bad things, so therefore, they didn't like the police. I was afraid of my mother. I wasn't afraid of the police. I was afraid of what my mother would do to me. But one of my friends became a police officer. And I liked my friend, but I didn't like the fact that he was a police officer. And he asked a question. He said, why you really don't like police officers? And growing up again in the 60s and the 70s, I said, all I see them do is beat up people. And the guy asked a question. He said, well, if you were a police, would you act like that? Would you do that? And I said, nah, I wouldn't. He said, well, why don't you become a police officer? I said, nah, not for me. So I finished school, went in the military, and found out that the military was good, but that wasn't something I wanted to do as a career. Came back, went on the police department, security, sheriff department. I was fortunate enough to retire. That's why it says retired lieutenant. I realized that my prejudice was the only thing that kept me from liking the police. Police are just like everybody sitting in here. You're only as bad as you make yourself out to be. In my career, I never shot anybody, never shot at anybody. Nobody never shot at me. Nobody never hurt me. And I never hurt anybody. And I retired. I have ambitions to go on a little bit further, but that'll be later. But today, and I want y'all to think about what you see. Can everybody see this slide? If not, I want y'all to move over because it's going to be very important. Some things I'm going to talk about. Some things you're going to know. Some things going to be new to you. And I guarantee you I'm going to say some things that you've never heard before. And you're going to say, wow, I didn't know that. And you're going to say, I see it all the time. Earlier, somebody said they had a master's degree. Who was that? I thought I heard some kids said they graduated. Nobody in here? Nobody. So everybody is under the age of 18, 18 or 100. You know, you're driving. It's going to be real important when I talk to you about that. But here's the thing I say. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. But I have a question that I want to ask you. The question is, how will you conduct yourself when you come in contact with law enforcement? How will you conduct yourself when you come in contact with law enforcement? And if you drive, you're going to get stopped one day, whether you're doing something or whether you're just driving along and there is a roadblock. You have to know how you're going to conduct yourself. I said knowledge is power, so let's talk about this word knowledge and what it means. Knowledge is just information and skills acquired through experience or education, theoretically or practically. You got to understand the subject. You have to understand the subject. If you have no understanding of what I'm talking about right now, it's going to be Greek. If I start speaking to you in French or Spanish, and you can't speak French or Spanish, then you will not understand what I'm talking about. Power, the ability to do something or act in a particular way. Strength, authority. Normally when police officers show up, you think about power. They have the authority because what? They have the badge and the gun. And you normally want to do everything they say. How many times you've been just standing around and you hear somebody tell the police, if you take that badge and gun off, I'll whoop you. Yeah, see, so what they're saying is because of that badge and that gun, you have the authority, so I'm going to respect your authority. So in a nutshell, if you have an understanding of the subject, you could, and the word is could, have the ability to control the outcome of the situation. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. In the book of Hosea, 4th chapter, 6th verse, it says, my people are destroyed. Why? For lack of knowledge. And even in our rejecting God, we reject knowledge. Do y'all agree with that? You agree with that? Let's talk about what law enforcement is. Because when you think of law enforcement, the only thing coming to your mind is the police with the uniform. But law enforcement has been given a black eye over the years. And let me tell you what I mean when I say that. I told you back when I was a youngster, I didn't like the police just because my friends didn't like the police. Because they were doing bad things. Normally, you're not going to like the police if you're doing the bad thing. Police really don't mess with good people. They're looking for people that are doing bad things. Law enforcement is a necessary entity, and without it, I like this, it would be total chaos. It would be like a gunfight at the OK Corral. The biggest gun would rule. If I had an AK-47 and you showed up with a 22, who's going to win the fight? AK-47 is going to win the fight. So, but we need law enforcement. It's a necessary entity. And here's what law enforcement is. All law enforcement is ensuring that the law is being obeyed. Make sure you're not out there running red lights. It's a vigilant committee trying to enforce the law. The word is trying to enforce the law. That's what law enforcement is, your uniform. Now, here's what they say in Romans, and this is one of my favorite Bible verses, 13th chapter of Romans. It says, let every person be subject to a higher power, the governing authorities. For there is no authority except God's appointment. For the authority that exists has been ordained by God. And if you read a little further in that chapter, it tells you that if you're not doing wrong, remember that verse, read the 13th chapter of Romans. If you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear from the power, the authority, the police. The police is ordained by God. I didn't write that. That is actually in the Bible. The power, the governing authorities. And if you're doing right, you have nothing to fear. That is in the Bible. And I don't think anything is in the Bible that is not true. If you ever come in contact with the police, they make